Resident Evil was the first survival horror game I ever played, the first PlayStation game I ever played, and the first three-dimensional game I ever played. So you can imagine this review is going to be a little biased, as this game has a life board game spot in my life. As you already know, the 2002 GameCube remake is excellent and improves so much upon the original in terms of atmosphere. But as you may not already know, is this a good HD remaster of a remake? And does the game hold up by 2015 standards some 13 years later? The original Resident Evil introduced us to tension and dread in a video game. Having to return to an item box and backtrack through a mansion filled with zombies and mutants time and time again with limited health and ammo resources, the disempowered feeling tank controls, and the necessity to save else lose all your progress is what made it so challengingly addictive and unique. That, and it was like the only horror game in the time at 1996, purposely made to play out like a B-horror zombie movie with fixed cinematic camera angles. Graphically, the game was able to get away with so much more than other games around that time because of its use of pre-rendered backgrounds. It was less taxing on the hardware and allowed for more detail, so the atmosphere was immersive. It was a giant success, leading to many successful sequels, other companies trying to get on the action, in a movie series that, was a movie series. Many people complain that Resident Evil has lost its way since Resident Evil 4, which I agree with. Removing the cinematic fixed camera angles, slow burn horror, dread, and supplementing that with high-octane action, over-the-shoulder shooter mechanics, co-op gameplay changes the style considerably. There is a clear divide in the timeline where Capcom suddenly decided we were bored of the classic style. With a quick look at the VGCharts.com for Resident Evil, it's obvious the majority want the old-style games over the new. With the success and sales of the re-release of Resident Evil, it makes two things apparent. One, people love the classic Resident Evil, and two, originally releasing the trademark mature survival horror series exclusive to the child-friendly Nintendo GameCube and changing the series based on expected poor sales, thinking it was a lost interest in the classic style of games, was a bad idea. Although, I can't be 100% sure why Resident Evil 4 went from this to this. But it doesn't take a rocket scientist, or in this case a businessman, to understand Capcom's business model. I'm still glad we got the Resident Evil 4 we got. It's not really a faithful representation of its name, but a fun arcadey shooter, nonetheless. That being said, the re-release of the remake of Resident Evil is the first time we are blessed with the classic Resident Evil in a while, and the overall reception is better than I expected, leading to the possibility of more of the classic style, including a re-release of Resident Evil 0 as leaked by Capcom themselves, and even better, a faithful remake of Resident Evil 2. That's what everyone wants, right? Fill the comments below. Let Capcom know. How else are they gonna know unless you give or take money from them? We all don't have money to just throw at giant corporate entities to influence decisions, right? I mean, why else do sites like Pirate Bay exist? Oh shit.
Freeze!
Wow.
Put down the microphone!
How did you guys do that?
You ever seen Minority Report, bitch?
I better retract that last statement. What the 2002 remake of Resident Evil added was above and beyond what anyone expected. There are new areas, new items, new mechanics, and entirely new puzzles as an attempt to mix things up and make things fresh and new again so fans of the original can play and relive those classic nostalgic memories that the original introduced to us. On top of that, the atmosphere is just astounding, even to this day. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I admit, I did run into some blurry textures in the pre-rendered environments and some objects. The environments look the best in the forest area behind the mansion with the fog and lighting effects. They look so... the atmosphere. What this re-release introduces to us years later is an option for widescreen, which is all fine and dandy if the screen bouncing up and down constantly doesn't make you motion sick. I thought there'd be an option to remove the up and down panning, but there isn't. Because of this, I just play in letterbox format. Besides, when it's zoomed out, the blurry textures become less obvious. Another peeve of mine is the top and the bottom of the screen has a little letterboxing, so when the camera is panned to the top or bottom, it cuts a chunk off with a big fat black bar. Now, let's talk about the controls. I don't get the big deal with the original tank controls and why people can't do it. Resident Evil was tank controls up until Resident Evil 5, but then they just dropped it. I guess when adapting the game for the mainstream, they realized people don't want to play with tank controls even though they love Resident Evil 4, and not many people realized that they were playing with tank controls. But because it's over the shoulder, I guess it's easier to comprehend. This is a cinematic game. You got all these fixed camera angles. It only makes sense that you push up on the D-pad and it moves you forward regardless of where the camera is facing. What I think people don't like about tank controls is how slow it is to turn, which I can understand, especially if you're in a hurry to get away from an enemy. But the controls attribute to a large percentage of the tension and dread you feel when playing. They added an option for 2D controls, similar to what Silent Hill 2 and 3 did, which moves the character respective of the direction you see on the screen. To me, it's a hell of a lot more confusing, especially when the camera angle changes and I do something stupid and run into a zombie. You won't catch any self-respective Resident Evil fan playing on true survival mode with these controls exclusively. But if these controls can introduce more people into the classic series, then why not? Besides, they are only tied to the stick and you can still use the tank controls on the D-pad, so you get the best of both worlds. The new controls can get you away from a zombie much quicker and are a great last resort. You also get more options with the controller mapping than you've ever had in a Resident Evil game before. Another new addition is a new difficulty level. As if Resident Evil was too hard on easy, they added a very easy. The options when starting a new game used to be a choice between mountain climbing or hiking. Now they added walking, which I just find funny. I don't know why. Like I said about the controls, if this can introduce more people to the classic series, then why not? I must admit that the interface and font decision bugged me. It doesn't really fit the theme of Resident Evil at all. I'm not 100% sure if this was the same font used in the GameCube version, but my argument still stands. Because of the huge typewriter theme in the game, what it needs is more of a serif style font and not a sans. With that, the shades of gray background behind the text is ugly to look at, and you'll have plenty of time to look at it because whenever you save any system settings, it takes a long time. And they also added a leaderboards, which it has to snap you out of the game to sync. And the leaderboards are so screwed up because people have figured out how to hack them to lie. Oh, I'm so sure you beat the game in 0 seconds, asshole. The leaderboards are a nice addition, but pointless if everyone is using them to cheat. But then again, these are no reasons to dock any points from the game. I know the people behind this HD remake port said they didn't want to make any changes or mess with the classic, but I feel like they could have made a few subtle changes. One, in the Deadly Silence port of the original game, they bound the knife to L. That way the knife doesn't take up an inventory slot and is part of the game's core mechanics. The first thing everyone does when they get to an item chest is throw that useless knife in there, never to be seen again. So that simple addition would have fixed that problem. 2. The Deadly Silence port of the original game also added the option to skip the doors between areas, making speedrunning more fun. But in this, you cannot bypass the doors. Some say that it's loading the next area, but that's not true. And even if, it would have less reason to load on a next generation console. If you make a wrong turn into a door, the aggravation with having to sit and wait through these long door animations intensifies. 3. The Deadly Silence port of the original game is just the best version of the game, and you should go buy that instead. It also has the original voice acting, which is the best voice acting ever in any video game ever.
Look at this. Oh, you like it?
God. Oh, that was great.
I feel like we're having a secret meeting.
Honestly, every time I play this game, it feels like the first time. And I think a lot of people will feel the same way when picking up this game. It's a great, wonderful classic remake of a classic that set the bar for remakes everywhere. To this day, this remake is by far the best remake I have ever played, with number 2 being given to Tomb Raider Anniversary or Final Fantasy IV on the PSP. I am a classic guy with classic tastes, and the classic, in my opinion, is just as classic as the remake. There is nothing more satisfying than the roots, then going on to experience the classic experience, re-experienced, remade, and possibly 10 years down the line, we'll get to experience a remake reboot, and that's the day I'm not looking forward to. Can't be any worse than Resident Evil 6, right? Oh god, my mind hurts. I can't do this anymore. Get out of my head! I don't really have to score this, do I? The remake is fine. Go buy it. But you probably already did buy it, considering it was the fastest selling day one digital release. And hey, if you decided not to buy it despite my expert opinion, then you could just send me the money. I mean, I'm broke and can always use the money. Video games are seriously addictive and expensive. But how can you have time for video games when you're seriously working all the time to afford these games? I think we all need to get jobs as testers, reviewers, or strategy guide authors and get paid to play video games. Am I right? Who's with me? We don't need pirate. Oh boy. Piranha 3D was a terrible movie. I didn't pirate it.